Hi, my friends. Welcome back behind the walls with your girl, Anna B. I appreciate you all clocking in for another episode. And of course, shout out to all of our new subscribers. We had made 10,000 friends around the world on YouTube. How exciting. I appreciate all of the love, all of the comments and engagement. I also wanted to drop my email just in case you want to get a hold of me. If there's anything that you see, any comments, any suggestions, if there's any clarification on any of the cases or suggestions for any cases, please feel free to reach out to your girl at AnnaContent88@outlook.com. Shout out to everybody who made a request for this video. Let's get into it. Women behind the walls in South Carolina.
Christina Adams has sat in jail for more than 750 days, ever since her arrest for the murder of her boyfriend, Michael Howe. Howe's brother-in-law told us his family is here for one reason.
We traveled across the country to be here today and see justice done for him.
Christina called her friend Daniel Martin around 10 p.m. Monday night, October 10, 2011. She told him she had shot her boyfriend Michael and asked him to come over. Daniel, who had been out to dinner with the couple earlier, rushed over to the home on Smith Street in York to find that Christina had lied. Michael was not shot. Not yet, anyway. Daniel said Michael was in the bathroom and he was fine. But then suddenly, Christina was next to him with a gun shooting Michael. Christina fired 10 shots with a .45 caliber pistol, hitting Michael 5 times. Afterwards, Daniel immediately drove to the police station with Christina's daughter in the back seat and reported the shooting. The police station was just 2 streets over from the home where Christina had lived with Michael for several years. When officers arrived at 18 Smith Street, they found Michael, a prominent employment attorney, dead. Christina was still present. She had thrown the gun in the yard and confessed that she had shot Michael. Daniel spoke to the local news the day after the shooting and shared the events as he remembers.
I went into the house to check on Michael, and she followed behind me with a gun and started shooting him.
Christina was taken into custody and charged with murder and possession of a weapon in the commission of a violent crime. Christina claimed she shot Michael because he hit her that evening. She did in fact have bruises on her, and the police had been called out to their home several times due to domestic disputes between the couple in the past. Christina had attempted to take her life twice in 2010 when the couple's relationship started to crumble. That was just a year before she killed Michael. It was years of dysfunction that came out that night. Christina's defense wanted to show that she was a battered woman. However, Christina agreed to drop those claims in exchange for a plea to voluntary manslaughter instead of proceeding with a murder trial. During her plea acceptance, her defense lawyer said Christina suffered a lifetime of sexual and physical abuse, starting when she was just 2 years old. Christina became pregnant at 16 and dropped out of school to work in the hopes of giving her daughter a better life than she's had. Christina was sentenced to 30 years straight in the South Carolina Department of Corrections. She will not be eligible for parole. Her projected release date is April 2nd, 2037. Michael was a well-known lawyer in York County, and his mother also worked for the court system for many years. So many people knew them that the judge and the prosecutor recused themselves from this case. Rest in peace to Michael. Yunique Weathers, a former military police officer from Fayetteville, North Carolina, was sentenced to life in prison for the execution-style shooting death of her girlfriend, De'Erica Fisher, who was 21 when she was murdered January 23, 2022. The couple were returning home from a weekend at the beach. According to the police report associated with Yunique's arrest, officers responded to a call for a shooting in a field near the intersection of Highway 9 and Pine Needle Drive in Longs, South Carolina. When they arrived, there were several witnesses pointing out into the field. As the officer walked around a canal and into the field, he heard a gunshot ring out. Yunique was then spotted with a gun. The report says the officer gave loud and clear verbal commands to drop the gun, at which time it appeared Yunique cleared the chamber, tossed the gun to the ground, and immediately dropped to her knees, placing her hands behind her back. When the officer approached the body of De'Erica Fisher, it appeared she was already deceased. All of this was caught on the officer's body camera. Yunique was arrested and charged with murder and possession of a weapon during a violent crime. She was booked and held at the J. Rubin Long Detention Center without bond until she went to trial December of 2023. The body camera footage of the first responding officer, was presented to the jury. Testimony indicated that De'Erica was shot 5 times, with the first 3 shots hitting her legs. Yunique delivered the final fatal shots minutes later, 1 to her face and 1 to her head as De'Erica sat in that field. A text message was retrieved from Yunique's cell phone to a person she called to pick her up that said, "Don't come. I'm going to jail. I killed her." The defense attempted to prove that the shooting was committed in the heat of passion after provocation, which would constitute as voluntary manslaughter, a lesser charge. Yunique took the stand in her defense. She testified that she and De'Erica were driving back to Fayetteville, where she was stationed at Fort Bragg. De'Erica became angry about a song she played. They argued, and as Yunique was driving, De'Erica jammed the gear shift into park, took the keys, and ran. Yunique said she followed her to the gas station, where the argument continued. She said she walked away when the police pulled up. As she walked along Highway 9, De'Erica, now driving, drove past her, but made U-turns and returned 5 times to continue fighting and trying to get her back in the car. Yunique said De'Erica threatened to kill herself and told her to take the 9mm pistol out of the car. When De'Erica pulled over at what would be the murder scene, Yunique said she was able to snatch the car keys and take her house key off the ring. She testified that De'Erica then got out of the car, struck her, and pulled her hair, and followed her to a water-filled ditch. "I was concerned. I had nowhere to go. I was upset. I was sad. I pulled the gun out and shot her in the leg," Yunique testified. Under cross-examination, Yunique said she only remembered firing the first shot to the leg and can't recall sending the text message to the person who was coming to pick her up. After a 3-day trial in Horry County, a jury of 8 women and 4 men took little over an hour to find her guilty of murder. She was not given the possibility of parole. Here is Yunique pictured July 29th, 2024, with a much different appearance. De'Erica leaves back a large family of brothers, sisters, her mom, her dad, and the saddest part is she left behind a little girl, a baby girl who will not get to know her mother, her beautiful mother. May De'Erica rest in peace, and condolences out to the Fisher family. Stacy Rabon's guilty conviction and life sentence came 31 years after her baby was found dead in a York County river. She was arrested in 2021 after DNA in the national database from her 2019 drug arrest matched DNA from the baby girl who was found in the Catawba River near Rock Hill, South Carolina on August 12, 1992. Sadly and tragically, the baby was stabbed a dozen times, suffocated, wrapped in a sheet, then put in a plastic bag that was left near the river. The community named and buried the infant Baby Angel Hope. Baby Angel Hope was delivered in a van near that river. Before her arrest, Stacy told the police that she had given the baby girl up for adoption, but that was never confirmed to be true. Stacy was sentenced to life, but because the crime happened in 1992, her sentencing falls under the sentencing laws of 1992, which would make a person eligible for parole after 10 years or 25% of the sentence, whichever came first. For Stacy, she will be eligible for parole in 8 years because she gets credit for the 2 years she spent in jail before she was convicted. The detective that made the DNA link said Stacy threw her baby into the cold Catawba River, never looking back, abandoning her, keeping her a secret for 29 years. And Stacy asked for mercy at her sentencing. She said her decision to give up her child to people she didn't know haunts her. I can't think of anything but her face, she said. Think about her everything. Growing up, all these things were taken from her because I made a poor decision. And clearly she's still making poor decisions by not being honest when DNA speaks for itself that baby girl is linked to Stacy. Lord Jesus. Wonder if she'll ever come clean. I would say not. She's made it all these years with this lie, this buried lie within herself. And I'm sure the reality of being haunted is the fact that she knows what she did to her own flesh and blood that she conceived and gave birth to, and looked over her shoulder for decades wondering if she'd ever get caught. In 2019, Deborah Hubbard issued an ultimatum saying that if she isn't given a new trial, moved to a different prison, or her sentence isn't modified, then she wishes to die, requesting to be given a lethal injection by the state of South Carolina in her handwritten post-conviction relief document, which was filed in Horry County. Deborah gunned down her boyfriend, Oscar Nobles, at her South Carolina home in 1991. On the afternoon of September 7th, Oscar returned to Deborah's house extremely intoxicated. According to her, an argument developed after she refused to give him money. Deborah stated that Oscar pushed her into a bookcase, punched her in the face, bloodying her nose, and threatened her with a gun. John Freeman, a friend of Deborah, who was present at the scene, however, saw no bruises or blood on Deborah and stated that he did not see her and Oscar fighting. While she testified that she did not remember doing it, Deborah shot Oscar several times. Oscar died as a result of 9 gunshot wounds. John Freeman testified that he saw Deborah shoot Oscar and that she told him the best thing he could do was go and keep his mouth shut. The police found Oscar's body covered with a blanket, plywood, and a small mattress in the backyard of her home. In her defense, she presented evidence regarding the battered woman syndrome. She was sentenced to life in prison the following year after her jury trial took less than 90 minutes to find her guilty of murder. A year before she killed Oscar, she was arrested for the murder of her husband, John, who was found shot twice in the face on New Year's Eve, 1990. There was never a murder weapon recovered, and there were no witnesses to the shooting. Therefore, Deborah was never convicted of any crime related to John's death. Deborah claimed that she's facing life-threatening conditions in prison because of an incompetent lawyer. She also referenced new evidence in the case, though the initial paperwork did not provide further details. The request was dismissed in May 2021, just as all the other appeals she's filed prior to 2019. Deborah's currently housed at Camille Graham Correctional Institution and Reentry Center in Columbia, South Carolina. "87-year-old Joseph Brown's body was discovered in the trunk of his Cadillac. According to the Williamsburg County Sheriff's Office, Brittany Epps and Jessica Jackson rode with Joseph to a cookout at his nephew's home in Greeleyville on March 29, 2014. The nephew testified that his uncle left the cookout around 9 p.m., headed toward Kingstree with Brittany in the front seat and Jessica in the back. Before midnight, officers responded to Kendall Park Road in reference to what was initially reported to a 911 dispatcher by Brittany as an accidental, self-inflicted gunshot wound to Jessica's hand. The two walked to a home in the area. Brittany told that homeowner that Jessica was hurt in a hunting accident. Jessica was taken to a local hospital for treatment. Later is when a deputy found Joseph's bloodied vehicle wrecked in the woods near an abandoned mobile home park on Kendall Park Road. When Jessica was released from the hospital, she was taken to the sheriff's office after her purse and identification were found in the back seat of Joseph's car. The first trial for the death of Joseph Brown ended with the jury unable to reach a verdict. Jessica, who was 18 at the time of her arrest, pled guilty to a reduced charge of attempted murder. She received a 15-year prison sentence in August 2015. Her projected release date is currently set as December 25, 2026. The evidence that was presented at the retrial for Brittany was that she and Jessica both conspired to rob and kill the elderly victim. Jessica testified that while she was behind the victim who was driving, she attempted to strangle him and was accidentally shot by Brittany, who repeatedly fired the gun towards Joseph when she was in the front passenger seat. Mr. Joseph died of multiple gunshot wounds to the head fired by his own handgun that police were never able to recover. While Brittany was a juvenile at the time of the murder, she was convicted of murder and possession of a firearm during a violent crime on July 29, 2016. What happened to the hand of one, hand of all? The legal theory in South Carolina that applies to accomplice liability. Jessica clearly got on the stand and said that she attempted to choke Mr. Brown. They were both aware of what was going on. How did she get 15 and Brittany got 45? Jessica's serving her time currently at the Graham Women's Facility, but from DOC records, it looks like Brittany is currently in an outside medical facility. And it looks like she's been there since September of 2023. She also had to make another outside medical trip in 2021 and twice in 2018. Wonder what that is all about. Rest in peace to Mr. Joseph Brown, taken so brutally in what should have been a very relaxed time of his life. Condolences to the Brown family. Lori Hollis was 26 when Spartanburg police named her as one of the 4 suspects in the death of 23-year-old Stephen Means. Stephen was found with a gunshot wound to his chest near a sidewalk outside the Oakview Apartments on April 7, 2011. He was taken to Spartanburg Regional Medical Center where he was pronounced deceased. Stephen was visiting his sister, who told the police that a group of men chased her brother to the front of the apartments. When she leaned out of her apartment, she heard a single gunshot and saw her brother lying on the ground, eventually running over to her brother, yelling for someone to call the police. Stephen was robbed of his cell phone and his jewelry, including his gold teeth. Several days later, Spartanburg police charged Lori Hollis, Charles Anderson Jr., Cortez Lyles, and Charles Jackson with Stephen's murder and armed robbery. Lori and Charles Anderson were tried in 2012. Testimony from law enforcement, various witness testimony, ballistic evidence, and DNA was presented by prosecutors. The murder weapon and a gun magazine were found hidden under a bed mattress at Charles's home by Spartanburg investigators. The bullet that was recovered from Stephen's body and a shell casing recovered from the crime scene matched the weapon. Lori was an accomplice throughout the attack on Stephen, and she was seen wearing some of the jewelry that was stolen from him after he was gunned down. After conclusion of a 4-day jury trial, Charles Anderson Jr. and Lori Danielle Hollis were both found guilty of murder and armed robbery. Charles was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Lori received a 30-year sentence, which she will serve day for day. Both Cortez and Charles Jackson pled guilty to misprision of a felony, neglect in reporting a crime, which means they deliberately concealed their knowledge of the robbery that resulted in Stephen's death. They both received a 10-year suspended sentence, with each getting different lengths on probation. Rest in peace to Mr. Stephen Means, and condolences to his family. Melody Oakley was arrested and charged with the murder and conspiracy in the death of her husband, Branchville Fire Chief Alan Oakley. 47-year-old Ann Anderson and 25-year-old Carrie Brown were also arrested on the same charges in December of 2013. 48-year-old Alan Oakley died from a stab wound to the neck in his home. Alan was employed by the Orangeburg County Fire District and was president of the Orangeburg County Firefighters Association. He was also retired from the National Guard. Alan told his wife they should end their relationship with Ann after she had gotten involved in insurance fraud. It was at that point the three women began to plot on Alan's life. It was believed that Carrie had no relations with the Oakleys. The women had come up with a texting code, which was sent the night of December 28th, 2013, which led Ann and Carrie to the Oakleys' home. Originally, Carrie was supposed to stab Alan, but she couldn't do it when she got to the house. Authorities say Ann Anderson took the knife and stabbed Alan in the neck. Melanie recalled Alan standing up with the knife still in his neck. Carrie was the first to confess to the crime. Her murder charge was reduced to voluntary manslaughter. The conspiracy charge was dropped. She was the first to confess. She was the last one sentenced. The judge delayed her sentencing. He couldn't decide if she deserved the same amount of time as Ann and Melody. Both Melody and Ann pled guilty as charged, both receiving 30-year sentences in 2014. Carrie's lawyer asked for a 5-year sentence because of her confession coming first, but the judge went with the minimum recommended by prosecutors, 15 years. All women were given time served back to the time that they were arrested. All women are also at the same prison facility. Rest in peace to Mr. Alan Oakley. Sandra Crawley, a former Spartanburg County resident, was arrested in 1999 for the 1987 stabbing death of Eugene Austin Davis. Eugene was found October 29, 1987 by a friend. He was lying face down on the back porch of his home in a pool of blood with 10 stab wounds to his head and back. Under his body was a shotgun. Authorities believed he was able to fire at least one shot at his assailants before he collapsed. Sandra's husband, Charles Alexander Crawley Jr., was serving a life sentence for the 1989 murder of a Duncan woman when he was 2, charged in Eugene's death. Sandra had told investigators that her husband acted alone in stabbing Eugene. She was given a polygraph test, but failed. She later admitted to helping her husband, Charles, in the fatal stabbing. Charles told authorities it was Sandra alone who took Eugene's life. Both Sandra and Charles's trials ended with guilty verdicts. Charles was sentenced to a second term of life in prison. I couldn't locate Charles currently in the prison database. I was able to find his court records that show all of his appeals that were filed were affirmed or dismissed. And I believe he may have passed while he was incarcerated because I cannot foresee him being paroled or released. Now, Sandra, she had to receive a mandatory life sentence. You see, she actually pled to being an accessory to murder, the murder that sent her husband to prison for life originally. She pled to that charge and received 2 years probation and a 27-month prison sentence that was suspended after she served 6 months. But because of this charge, Again, she received the mandatory life sentence. She is parole eligible, and her parole eligibility date is currently listed as June 21st, 2025. Rest in peace to Mr. Eugene Austin Davis. Dawn Marie Baxter faced a judge, not a jury, in her 1987 trial on charges of murder and arson in the deaths of her 4 children. Dawn's public defender believed a judge would understand the complexities of her case better than a jury would. Dawn was 31 years old when she pled not guilty by reason of insanity. Prosecutors were seeking the death penalty in the case due to the aggravating circumstances of multiple children being murdered. Fires had been set upstairs in a hallway storage closet across from the bedroom where the children were found, and in a closet of a second bedroom. An electrical drop cord had been tied to the bedroom door. It was also wrapped around the doorknob of the storage closet and tied to the stair railing. Dawn Baxter was found guilty but mentally ill of all 4 counts of murder and 1 count of arson. She was sentenced to life with the possibility of parole in 20 years. She'll be up for parole in January of 2026.